Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope you had a good week and you're looking forward to a nice weekend. Um, got the election behind us. We are all still here, so at least we have that going for us. So I'm going to try to deliver a really brief lecture here on the ethical basis for cultural competence. As always, I'm going to also post the non-audio slides, and you'll see as I uh, go through the lecture right now, I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff that I don't think benefits from having me talk necessarily. So I would like to request that you also check out the non audio version of this lecture so that you can kind of slow down and take a closer look at some of the slides that I kind of breeze by. So, what's most important to me, and what I really wanted to take some time talking about is looking at the basic reasons that cultural competence is such a big deal in rehabilitation counseling. I mean, certainly in the context of the election specifically, we know that we as a country face a bunch of issues related to our increasing diversity, right? And certainly a lot of that fuels political discourse and political disagreement. Um, I almost want to say let's set that aside for a second because while some of the emergence of the importance of cultural competence reflects the emergence of dialogue regarding diversity in the country generally, within rehabilitation counseling, our history with diversity is really very clear. And the emphasis on diversity really stems from a very pragmatic concern for making the field as strong as possible. So let's try and kind of set these ideas aside from our kind of internal ongoing political narratives and really think about this in a clinical context. So if you look at the history of rehabilitation counseling, and this is really going to go to most helping professions, the historical lack of cultural competence among practitioners is one reason that people from diverse groups underutilize counseling services. So right there, just from a self-preservation standpoint, right? We're counselors. We want jobs. We want to be able to attract people to the services that we provide. Well, if we're not good at providing services for diverse folks, that's not going to work real well, even just from a business standpoint, right? And we all know how the demographics in the country are changing to where people like myself, white males or white people are not going to, we may be a plurality for a while, but we're not going to be a majority for too much longer. So if you have a field that's only geared towards serving one kind of people and there's a whole bunch of people, that's not very good for the people that need services, and it's also not very good for the field. So because of this, because there is a literature that shows that diverse folks have a sense that services aren't going to be as effective for them, and you pair that with the idea that the population is growing, increasingly diverse, and with research that indicates that treatments that were designed for European Americans will not necessarily work the same for people from diverse racial and ethnic groups. So again, this is an important thing to think about. All of our major theories, all of our major approaches grow out of research that focuses on who? Well, basically white people, right? There's going to be an increasing proportion of the people that we're serving who are not just white people. We're doing ourselves a disservice. And of course, we're doing the people we should be serving a disservice as well. So, what you see in the literature recently, in the last 5-10 years, is an emergence of the awareness of the importance of using model driven and culturally sensitive evidence based counseling practices to enhance outcomes for everyone. So you've got an increasingly diverse population. You've got the realization that not all treatments work the same for all people. And you've got an awareness within the field that we want to increase the use of treatments that the effectiveness, the efficacy of, can be supported empirically across cultural groups. And that's the very most important thing that I want us to take away from this lecture. And I am going to go through the rest of the slides quickly, but that's what I want us to remember and to think about. There is an actual history of us not doing as great. So how does this manifest? How does this look in terms of changes that have arisen? We talked about this some, and we talked about it, I think, in theories, but I think it's a section of theories that you all weren't in. There was a time where the idea was that if you get assigned a client, or someone comes in to be a client, and you feel like you don't necessarily line up with that person culturally, or you don't share the same values based on culture, well, then the right thing to do is to refer that person. That's not the emphasis currently. The emphasis now is on learning to work with everyone, moving closer to, say, the model that physicians follow. It would be sort of strange to go into a physician for a checkup or whatever, and that physician says, oh, well, I'm actually not an expert in working, we'll use me, I'm not an expert in working with white males, so I'm going to have to refer you to a different physician. That obviously doesn't happen, at least not very often, and the field of counseling is moving in that direction. So we're moving away from referral based on cultural identity. At the same time, we are bound to practice competently. So that requires that we have cultural competence, right? Because if we're essentially going to be required to serve anyone, we're not going to have the choice to kind of pick and choose who we want to work with. And we're obligated to practice competently. Well, that means that we need to be culturally competent, right? All of this aligns very clearly to ideas of non-discrimination, which are presented in our Code of Ethics. And then you will see, of course, in our course material, like today, that we are actually required by our accrediting bodies to infuse multicultural and diversity-focused material into all of our courses, so that we kind of come away from our theories course with a framework for thinking about our theories generally, and then a framework for thinking about our theories with respect to diverse individuals. Clearly the same here for ethics. And another goal that you see manifest in the Code of Ethics that we haven't had as much success with yet, I don't think. We're committed to recruiting and retaining a diverse faculty, because we want to incorporate the voices and perspectives of people who have different backgrounds. That can be tough to do, as you probably know, but it is an ongoing goal. And actually, if you go to, say, our NCRE conference, the National Rehabilitation Counselors Educator Conference every year, it's pretty cool because when you have the whole field in the room, or a big representation in the field, we are a pretty diverse group. There are a lot of folks of color, there are a lot of women, there are a lot of people with disabilities in the room, and to me, that it's comforting because it shows that we are actually making some progress uh, in that regard. So now we're getting to the part of the slides that I'm going to kind of bolt through and let you guys take a look at on your own time. There's a model that I think can be helpful for thinking about cultural issues. It's called the respectful cultural model. The model acknowledges that both counselors and people both counselors and clients are members of different cultural and identity groups, and these identity groups can kind of intersect and have an increased effect compared to if we're thinking about people in terms of just coming from a single identity group. If that doesn't make sense, I think it will in the next couple slides, and I think it certainly will when you take a minute and kind of slow down and look these over in the non-audio copy. The model addresses the multi-dimensional nature of human development in a cultural sense by directing attention to 10 factors. And it's a practitioner model. It's a way for thinking about the counseling relationship. And I think the key piece of this model is awareness. And I think we've probably talked about that a lot in the context of different areas of ethical practice for counselors. So we think about folks' religious and spiritual identity. We think about where they come from economically and in terms of class distinction, working class, upper middle class, poor, working poor. These factors, it's not just a piece of this idea of PC, political correctness. It has real ramifications for how well you work with someone, right? If someone's background is, say, let's say working poor, and we're in Appalachia, so we have a lot of folks who come from a working poor background. The way they receive services in many cases is going to be different from someone who, say, comes from an upper middle class professional background. That's just true. That's not politics. That's not political correctness. That's just true. So if we want to be the best counselors that we can be, we need to have an awareness of how these dynamics affect the way that we probably even more obviously are issues like sexual identity. If we're really freaked out by say certain gender identities or certain sexual orientation identities that are outside of the traditional concepts of masculinity, femininity, and heterosexual relationships, if that stuff really freaks us out, it's going to be difficult to provide services to people who identify as one of these identities that are outside of the norm, right? And if you work in a state VR agency or Department of Veterans Affairs like I did, you don't have a lot of latitude to sort of, I'm not going to serve this person. It just doesn't work that way. So again, we need to have some fluency, some fluidity for providing services to all different types of people. Psychological maturity, I think that hopefully we address that in a lot of our clinical content, lifespan development and such. Racial and ethnic identity, talked about that. Chronological developmental challenges, meaning people where they're at in terms of age and psychological maturity. The impact of trauma can be significant in terms of people's development. Individuals' family background can have a significant physical characteristics, including disability, can have an impact on the way that people receive services, right? And then location of residence, location of residence and language differences. I think that we can think about at least for me, my rural state, and understand that our rural identity means something. It's not like a PC construct. It's real. So it has an effect on the way that folks engage with service providers. And that's it. I'm here at the end. Again, the main thing I want us to take away is cultural competence really matters, just like any other clinical skill. It's not a political thing. It's a very real clinical thing. And then that the key piece is having an awareness to the way that you respond to certain situations, having an awareness of your level of skill and comfort with different types of folks. So I will post these slides also without the audio. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.